Dive into the world of writing, publishing, and marketing on the Lead Machine Growth Show with guest Michelle Van De Paz. Discover the essentials of turning your ideas into a published masterpiece as Michelle, a seasoned author and publishing consultant, shares her insights and strategies. This episode is a must listen for anyone looking to navigate the publishing industry and amplify their impact on the world with their book.
This episode of the Lead Machine Growth Show is brought to you by Lead Machine, the step-by-step, tech-easy system for getting leads online. Are you struggling to get leads from your lead magnet? Are you tired of seeing low conversion rates and losing potential customers? It's time to revive your lead magnet and start attracting more leads. Download our free report, 10 Deadly Lead Magnet Mistakes That Are Costing You Leads, and learn how to create a high-converting lead magnet that engages your audience and drives conversions. Don't let common mistakes hold you back any longer. Revive your lead magnet today and download your free report at www.getleadmachine.com/deadly. Welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show, where you will discover how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Paul Guyan, the mastermind behind the Lead Machine, introduces you to trailblazers who inspire you to implement life-changing solutions and systems you can model to nurture your leads and get your offers seen by your ideal clients who will invest in themselves and you. Be sure you visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, tune in and get ready to transform your vision into reality.
And welcome to the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guyan, your Lead Machine host, the creator and founder of the Lead Machine Mastermind, and I'm dedicated to helping you tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream. Whether you're just starting out or looking to take your business to the next level, let's get this conversation started and turn your dreams into reality. Well, our guest today is Michelle Van De Paz, an accomplished professional who captivates with empowering message and unwavering support. As a seasoned author, speaker, and coach, she has a wealth of experience and profound insights into publishing, online marketing, and living with a purpose, which I think is super important. We probably should have put that first. Michelle lives in the mountains of Colorado, where she lives with her family, 40 goldfish, and an occasional mountain lion or bear. Oh my. She's often walking through nature, thinking of new ways to help her clients live most authentic, successful lives and grounding herself in the beauty of the world around her, whether at home or through her travels. Author and speaker and coach is also the co-founder of Grace Point Publishing, innovators in collaborative partnership publishing. She has helped thousands of authors in her 25 years as a publishing consultant and 150 books as a publisher. She has 5 best-selling books and pulls back the curtain to help nonfiction authors combine purpose, mission, and books to elevate their platforms for profit and for profit. Well, thank you, Michelle. That's an impressive bio. I couldn't have written a better one.
That's good. Yeah, kind of covers everything, right?
Yeah, it does. It
For
does.
having me.
So welcome to the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So Percolate, procrastination from your TEDx talk. What's that all about?
Yeah, so, yeah, the older we get, we realize, I think, that sometimes it's right timing and sometimes we're just screwing it up. And there's a lot of wisdom and understanding where you are in that process, because it's definitely a balance. People come to me all the time. I've been thinking about this book for 20 years. I know I have to write a book. People tell me I have to write a book. And then you have to lean into that and decide, is it time right now to write this book? And if it is, why aren't you doing it? Are you procrastinating, or are you actually just percolating, thinking about it? And maybe it's coming up to time, or maybe you thought about it and even wrote on it, but it wasn't quite time, and now it's time. So I talk and explore those things in my TEDx talk so that we don't always beat ourselves up thinking we're in procrastination or fear. Sometimes we are. Sometimes we're just in a creative process.
Yeah. Huh. I get that. And I've got a book in me. In fact, my first book was a cookbook.
Yeah.
It was my first foray into publishing, self-publishing, and it was actually a community cookbook for called the lead or the Food to the Rescue cookbook. It was for a food rescue operation that was just
Mm.
starting up, and uh, and we built 100 donors in 100 days, basically, uh, because we had people, chefs and local celebrities, contributing to the book. So that was my first foray into it, and I really I was going to be a redneck cookbook because I was around a bunch of rock and roll rednecks because I'm a rock and roll drummer, and that's how that idea came about. But I figured, you know what? It would be better if I aligned myself with a charity and how I could help them, and then that just took off. So,
Nice.
so yeah, so that was good. And my second book was a Journeys to Success compilation book,
Okay.
which
Excellent.
was a bestseller.
Yeah.
Uh,
And now you're ready for another book, right?
yeah, that's what the other my other guests that I've had the book publishers and book coaches have been telling me.
Right.
But yeah, so what's all the fear about just taking that action and getting out there? Can you
Yeah.
talk about that?
We all have it. Men,
Yeah.
women, old, young, experienced writers, not experienced writers. We all have it. Am I good enough? What am I going to say that hasn't been said before? I'm going to put my heart and soul into this book and nobody's going to read it. I'm going to get bad reviews on Amazon. I'm going to spend a bunch of money on marketing and it's going to tank, right? It's like we all have the same things. I can't write. My writing sucks. I'm going to turn in my manuscript and my editor is going to tear it up and tell me I was right. We all have the same things going on in our head. But that's true with anything. That's true with sales. It's true with, you're becoming a parent for the first time. You're going to go climb a mountain, right? It's the
Hmm.
same. And it's just our subconscious trying to protect us. And it's our job as adults who have dreams and goals and wishes and intentions and want to help do what we're here to do in the world to
Yeah.
discern when to push through that. Like, I don't want to jump out of an airplane. My fear around that, I'm happy with that fear. I don't want to push through it. It's not a big thing. But my fear around public speaking, I want to push through.
Yeah.
Around, writing and publishing my next book, I want to push through. And so we get to choose what to push through, but we have to recognize that sometimes it's fear.
Yeah. And one of my guests, Sylvain Hesh, we call him Sly, and he teaches people how to get over fear of public speaking. And he was a stutterer and turned world-class speaker, which is amazing. And what he did was he would say, what is more real, this pencil in your hand or those thoughts in your head? And he takes you through an exercise to overcome it. So really, we worry about all these 999 things that probably will never happen. And
Right.
if you think through them, to say, well, what would be the worst if that did happen? Would my wife still love me? Would my kids still love me? Would I still, would it kill me?
Right.
No.
Right.
And it's just not rational, but they're there. Those fears are there.
One of the things that I like to take people through is a short exercise where they have permission. You have permission to write anything you want to write. It does not mean an editor's ever going to see it. Certainly does not mean it's going to get published.
Yeah.
Usually, all your writing goes through at least one edit, maybe a rewrite or two. So I encourage people to just write whatever's in their heart and not worry about the end game yet. You will
Yeah.
eventually, but not yet, because whatever you're writing today is probably not going to end up on the published page. So you have permission to just explore what you want to write about.
Yeah. And you mentioned heart, and that really resonates with me. And we also mentioned purpose. So can
Yeah.
we unpack that a little bit?
Wow. I wrote a whole book about purpose. I
Hmm.
think a lot of people spend their life chasing it, trying to
Yeah.
figure out what they're supposed to do in the world. And purpose to me is really how you're supposed to be in the world and has nothing to do with doing. So if you find yourself a natural communicator, a natural caregiver, a natural teacher, a natural motivator. Those are the kinds of verbs that I ask people to lean into, because that's how you are being in the world. And you will be like that around your kids, at your job, at your business, at the grocery store. That's kind of your default, right? And we all have bad days and whatnot, but I'm just talking about how your heart wants to present in the world. And when you put that in front and lead with that, that helps you stay kind of in touch with how you're going to communicate in your book. It really has nothing to do with my purpose is to be a writer, my purpose is to be a nurse. If you're a great caregiver, you might choose to be a nurse, but there are plenty of research nurses and, all other kinds of nurses that are not necessarily caregivers. Same thing with writing. And so tap into that and just notice, do you like to teach? Do you like to share? Then that's the approach you'll bring to your book.
Yeah, I like that. And I kind of believe that purpose is also um, one of my friends was going, gosh, my purpose in life is to be a good husband to my wife. And that's being in the world. And I said,
Right.
yeah. And he wanted to do all these great things and paint and create and do this stuff. And those were passion projects.
Right.
But at the end, he's just supposed to be for his state in life. And he's a very creative guy, and he's still doing that. But I think he's a lot happier now that he found his purpose. My purpose is a father. I'm the father to 7 children.
Wow. Good
Well,
for
it's
you.
between my wife and I. We have
Yeah. Well, they're still your kids, wherever they come from.
they are. It's an honor to have
And
my
then you
stepkids.
drum. Do you still drum?
Oh yeah.
So that's a creative outlet.
Oh yeah.
And writing might be a creative outlet.
I
Right?
write a lot. I do write.
But it may not be. So writing is not fun and creative for everybody.
Yeah.
Writing is fun and creative for some population of the humanity out there. They're the kinds of people who like to journal or like to write short stories or poems and pump out books and so forth. And even those people get really super stuck and in self-doubt and worried about their book. And then there's what I call the rest of us, who you have to drag us kicking and screaming to get finished.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a creative project, but it does feel like a calling.
Yeah. I like that. So what are some of the challenges that you help your students and your clients overcome when they face this?
Well,
We've covered a few of those things.
we
Self-doubt
have. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's how I would say it is, what are you willing to really just put your stake in the ground over? What are you willing to say? This is what I believe. This is what I know. I'm going to put it in a book and shout it from the rooftops and sell it from Amazon. What is that? And very often, especially business owners who are often multitaskers, have lots of ideas, they're entrepreneurs, they could, always thinking about marketing, could go a million different ways with a book because they have lots of ideas. So I'm like, choose one big focal point, especially for your first book. And then you create stories around that. So what I really help with is some book coaching and developmental editing, which is big picture. Who's the book for? Why are you writing the book? What's the purpose of your book? How's the book going to help your client? Are you using your book to help your business, to get speaking engagements, to build a foundation? All of those things. I mean, we can do that and outline your book in 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
But then the hard work comes of actually writing it. And so then, I cheerlead, beat my clients with a wet noodle, send them annoying voice texts, invite them to come to a writing club, like all the things to get it done. And there's lots of tools. You can have someone interview you, you can hire a ghostwriter, you can hire an editor that works with you to help you write it. Like there's lots of tools to get it written.
Yeah.
But the hardest part is just getting all the stuff out of your head and organized. For a lot of people, that's the hardest piece. So it's ready to start writing to those bullet points or to those chapters.
Yeah, and I think, well, we talked about this before we started recording was who you serve. So let's dive into that a little bit, because my listeners are primarily business owners who want to amplify their authority and get their message out there and share what you just mentioned, that big idea. And they do have a lot of them. So who is it that you serve?
It's someone who says, I have enough knowledge and experience to set myself apart in the marketplace.
Hmm.
So it's not usually not the brand new entrepreneur unless they've come from a profession. Let's say they've been a dentist and they're ready to move over into coaching other dentists, for instance, right? Something.
Yeah.
Um, but they have some knowledge and some wisdom to put in a book. It could be through personal stories, it could be through client stories. Um, and they have a reason for writing the book that will help amplify their business. Most of my clients just want to be seen and heard for what they do, right? And
Yeah.
so some have coaching programs, some are on the stage, some have podcasts, some just want to sell the book and write the next one.
Yeah.
But in a nonfiction world, a book has kind of become a kind of a go-to thing. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'm asked before, like to get on a podcast, well, what's the link to your book? Not do you have a book, but what is
Yeah.
the link to your book, right? If you're supposed to be the expert in your field, you must have a book. It used to be TEDx, podcast, and a book. Um, Now it's for sure like still a book and then maybe a podcast or maybe
Hmm.
something on YouTube, right? Is kind of the next one. And then maybe a signature talk or a course. People
Yeah.
are looking for that trivector to show that you are the expert in the field, that
Hmm.
you are the go-to person. And so we really set up a nonfiction book to help people who are ready to go to that next step and really showcase their work in a nonfiction book that way.
Yeah. So the idea is to amplify our authority and show that we're an expert. So how do you design that into a book? How do you make it so that that's the end with I would assume there would be a call to action of some sort, but how do you position it that
There
way?
is, but you've got to weave it into the book too. So, there's a template out there that some people teach and is right for other people. It's not my client, but it's right for other people. Write your book in a weekend, write your book in 90 days.
Yeah.
It's a template. What are the 3 things you teach? What are your 3 stories? Boom, you're done, free on Amazon or 99 cents on Amazon, free on the website, give it away and build, right? That's
Yeah.
one way. What I like to do is really figure out where you want to be in 5 or 10 years from now, what that message is, what is your legacy there. Doesn't mean this is going to be the only book you write. Does not mean like everything has to go in this book, but let's
Yeah.
reverse engineer it a little bit. So
Mhm.
if I were to ask you that, what would you say where do you want to be with this show and your business in 5 years from now?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I have the show to amplify my authority and to create visibility and to meet awesome people like you who could be strategic partners or could be clients, become clients. I enable people how to leverage technology for profit. Basically, I've helped business owners over the last 40 years amplify their profits and their authority, and I do it all the time with creating lead machines and other automation to automate processes and
So I would say for you, what we would look at is a preface that would talk a little bit about you, your history. That did you say 40 years? You've been doing this for 40
yeah,
years, and how technology, like I've been in business 40 years, how technology, like I ran a whole business on the 3x5 index cards and
yeah,
ledger sheets, right?
yeah,
So
uh-huh,
you would talk about all that. Then in the intro, you would talk about how technology's changed so much and look at the new and exciting things coming up. And then I would think in this book, you talk about how we don't always know where, for instance, AI is going to be in 5 years. We can take some guesses, but we don't really know. We couldn't really have guessed at the beginning with Steve Jobs what's happened now. We could have, he may have had some guesses, and we may have kind of guessed some of that. And so I would write some chapters around how you can stay flexible and agile, even with the changing technology coming really fast, because you're an expert in that.
Mhm.
I would write about what are some things that you can implement today for your lead gen that is not going to change, right? Like opt-ins and websites and shaking hands with people and giving away free gifts and, um, networking. All of those things probably don't change for lead gen, right?
Well, they don't. And they don't. Business owners want to grow no matter if they're using index cards. And guess what? They were shaking hands back then.
Right,
Or if they're using AI to create their messages.
right.
By the way, if there's no emotional intelligence or ethical practices with that, then you're not going to be sustainable. And that would be my overarching theme over everything is the ethical practices of growing a business ethically.
And
Because
so
so
for
much,
you, right?
yeah,
So in this book, you're also going to talk about your heart, your ethics, your intention. Why are you having this business? And use technology as your tool,
right.
not to take over your business, right? So
Yeah,
there's your book outline.
right. And I'm more interested in the application of whatever's available so that you can grow and have these partnerships and have great employees, great businesses, great relationships with vendors and clients. That's
Nice.
more important than the technology.
Right.
That's just a tool. And
Yeah.
I think
Nice.
people have it flipped over. They
Right.
have
And
it flipped over.
we
Oh,
can have
AI is going to be the answer for everything. Well, it's not.
well, we can have a whole discussion about AI books
I
if you
know.
want. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think, and then, for you, it would be, are you giving something away? Or if you're working with businesses, is it a consult?
Mhm.
And that goes in the back of your book with maybe a QR code or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. That's great. And that's why I have people like you on because there's things that I don't know that's why I'm having you. And there's things that my listeners don't know.
Right.
And that's
And,
golden
it
stuff.
usually takes a couple of hours to really outline a book in detail and get all the bullet points. But, we got you a few chapters in 5 minutes.
Thank you. So
Should you
what advice would you give? Pardon me?
should you choose to write them?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, well, that's next of a long list of things. So what advice would you give people like me who are thinking about their next book or someone who's looking to write their first book? What kind of advice would you give?
Well, the first thing you got to do is just do a big mind dump. You got to just get all your thoughts out on paper, not worry about if it's going to get published. I usually have a list to the side of me where I jot down do laundry, pick up dog, whatever from the vet, right? Because what happens is as you start writing or journaling, all these other things pop into your mind. It's like your mind's let loose. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I can't forget this. I can't forget that. If you
Mhm.
write it down, your mind will settle. Your subconscious will say, okay, there's a list for my dinner. I don't have to like keep it in my head all the time. And that unleashes a little creativity underneath. For you, I would actually tell you to go drum for an hour and then
Mhm.
sit down and write.
Yeah.
We got to get out of our brain in order to allow that creative flow to happen.
Mhm.
And sometimes brand new writers think they have to be in their brain to write. And it's actually the opposite. So go walk, drum, do yoga, do dishes, take a shower, get out of your brain, and then sit down and just mind dump. That's the first step. Obviously, the second step would be to hire me, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if that's not your second step, then you want to kind of put the things in order of how you think they might flow. But you don't have to write it in that order. You can skip around, be a little bit spontaneous if that's your style, and just
Mhm.
try to sit down and write for 20 minutes a day or a couple hours on the weekend and have some kind of regular schedule so that you can see progress.
Yeah. And what about the purpose? Is that a good idea to to think about that, or you beat
You
yourself
gotta
up, or you
think
just
about,
let that flow?
yeah, well, you gotta keep saying, why am I writing this book? Who am I here for? Why am I doing this? That's underarching under all of it. That's our framework. That's
Yeah.
that's what's holding us up. So that's always there.
Yeah. So what sort of tools do you use when working with authors, or suggesting that authors use to or potential authors use to go through that process?
Right.
I mean, pencil and paper, I know you can do that, but there's lots of other things out there.
Absolutely. Word, Google Docs, people use Pages. You can use Scrivener, Chapterly, any of those kinds of tools. The more extensive the tool is to help you organize chapters and write table of contents, like there are tools out there you can buy for $20 a month or a couple $100 or something.
Yeah.
The more complicated, the more technical the technology is. And it's one more piece of tech that you have to learn. And then it becomes, is this a procrastination thing, or is this a tool I'm actually really going to learn and use?
Yeah.
And for some people, they just don't need to learn any more technology. They just need to start writing.
Uh-huh.
So tools are not always the thing I recommend people go to, because it can be a distraction. Because now all of a sudden you have, what was that voice thing, Dragon? When you used to be able to,
Yeah, Dragon Speak or something like that.
yeah, but you had to train it, right? Back in the day, you had to train it to understand your voice. Otherwise, you spent hours and hours editing. And I can't tell you how many authors just got frustrated with the whole thing. Some of the tools available to writers are the same. You can get lost in the frustration of having to learn the new tool. And so you have to decide, are you just procrastinating, and are you better off just spending the hours sitting down and writing?
Right. And speaking of Dragon Speak, I think it was called that. I have
Yeah.
a story. A lawyer. He was an attorney, and he was in his late 70s, and he was really struggling with this, and he was so frustrated with it, uh, and it wouldn't come out the way he wanted it to,
Right.
and it just he just gave up on it. But
Right.
that reminds me, though, of my parents. My parents were doctors, and they used dictaphone. It was what it was called back then, with these rolls that they would record their patient notes into, and then that would go to a transcription service, and at the hospital. And my mom would be up until she'd fall asleep in her chair, just dictating her, because she was always behind. She was always into the helping and solving problems rather than doing the administrative work.
Right.
That's what healers do. So, but yeah, speaking into Microsoft Word or Google Docs is another great way, I think, of creating. I do that every now and then.
Yeah.
And of course, I transcribe my podcasts also for a lot of reasons. So there's some great tools out there. We mentioned AI, so that's not a tool you mentioned. So let's talk about AI for a minute. What's your experience with that?
My experience, because I play with chat GPT mostly personally,
Yeah.
is every time I try to ask it to write something in my voice, it doesn't. It is full of emojis and says things like empower and embrace and in conclusion, and words that I just would never use, that are just not words I'd use. And I've tried to train it to be more in my voice, and it just doesn't quite get it. So what I have used it for is giving it a paragraph and saying, this is the next class I'm teaching. Will you outline it for me? And it'll take my paragraph or two and kind of turn it into bullet points and say, this would be a good first module, second module. And then I'll take that and I'll add to it and say, would you please go copy edit this, right? Or proofread it. But the problem is I still have to go edit it because it's still not my voice.
Yeah.
And people do business with me, and I think you would agree with this. People do business with people, and that's coming back around. There was a whole 8 or 10 years there where people would just click on a button and buy. And that's not happening anymore. We're going back to people do business with people. The handshake thing is coming back. And
Yeah,
so
people
gotta
are
be
so
your
isolated.
voice. Hmm?
People are isolated.
Right. And we're tired of it.
Yeah, we're
And
tired of it.
so I think if you use Chat GPT or any AI, it's what you were talking about earlier, Paul. It's a tool.
Yeah.
It can't take the place of your intelligence, your heart, your intention, what you want to say, your voice. It's just a tool, as with all technology.
Yeah. And I do use it very much for outlining. I use Grammarly.
Uh-huh.
I use Grammarly quite a bit.
Yeah.
23, 25 million words, I think it told me that last week, which is
Wow.
amazing. Uh, but I use it for outlining. I use it for, I might dictate a storyline and say, here, flesh this story out for me and give me some major points.
Yeah.
And then I'll use that and rewrite it, use it for my newsletter. I use it
Nice.
for show notes. But I tell it, use the voice that's in this interview. So that's what we'll be doing. This interview will be transcribed, and I'll generate show notes and timestamps and all those things for productivity. So I don't have to do that manually. That will
Right.
just it's a tool, but it doesn't create this it didn't tell me what to say, didn't tell you what to say. We're having a kind of just a discussion,
Yeah.
and so it's a tool. It's a productivity tool, just like
It'll be
Microsoft
amazing.
Word.
It's going to be amazing to see where it is in 5 years.
Yeah. Let's see. So we talked about that. Where do you think it's going? Any idea? You got virtual reality, there's storytelling. I don't really know too much about
Yeah.
VR.
I don't know, but what's interesting is people are reading more now than they were.
Yeah.
People are reading a lot of fiction. People are listening, right? So I do think we'll get AI audio. We played with it a little bit as a publisher, AI voices and so forth.
Yeah.
I think that'll come. It's not quite there yet. We have some privacy issues and so forth to deal with.
Yeah.
If you use AI in anything right now, you have to declare it. It's not copyrightable, and Amazon is taking down all the AI books that went up at the very
Yeah.
beginning. Chat GPT books or whatever don't fly on Amazon anymore.
Yeah.
So, some of those things will get regulated and more creative. We'll see both sides of that. So, I don't know where it's going to go, but people are reading more now than they were 10 years ago, I think. It's
Yeah.
coming.
And that's great. That's really great. And of course, there's just millions of books out there. And so few good ones, but there are a lot of good ones. And there's some great
There's a lot
authors
of
out
good
there.
ones.
There's a lot of good ones. And I'm discovering getting into the podcast world. I was never really into podcasts, but I'm an audio learner, which is really strange, right?
Uh-huh.
But I was a podcaster who didn't listen to podcasts. But I
Uh-huh.
said, okay, I need to start listening to podcasts. And so now I'm hooked, and I'm learning so much about. I've ordered probably 10 or 12 books in the last 12 months, or probably 6 months, uh, because of the exposure to that, and they're really good books.
Good.
The 1 Minute Millionaire I just got
Yeah, good.
yeah, so that's great. What else would you like the world to know about you and writing books, and what's your passion?
I think if it's in your heart, if you have a dream and intention to help yourself, your business, help heal the world, tell your story, whatever it is, start writing. And don't listen to all your internal chatter about why you should or why you shouldn't. Just start writing. View it as a creative project, see where it goes, and then reach out for help to someone, because all of us get stuck in creative projects. I'm sure as a drummer, you've had lots of teachers over the years or watched videos or gotten help, right? It's a
Lots of
creative
them.
project, writing a book. So remember that. And, if you have that placed upon your heart, then it's yours to do, and don't die with your book inside of you.
That's great advice. And so, as we wrap up with your final words, what are 3 things our listeners can do to put these ideas into action?
Yeah, start writing and just play with it without judgment. Just call it journaling if you want to, just so that you know nobody else ever has to read it. If you decide you do want to take some of your journal and turn it into a book, start on Word or Google Docs and do not edit as you go. Yes, if you've got Grammarly or spell check or whatever, but don't stop the creative flow.
Yeah.
So that would be the second thing. And then the third thing I would say is stay in the knowledge of who you are and don't be afraid to say what you really think. Don't be afraid to put it down on paper. Your editor will help you if it needs to get dialed back or not. But people kind of shrink themselves sometimes when they think it's going to go on paper and they're not willing to really say what they really want to say because they're afraid it's going to be too outlandish or people won't accept it. So go for it. 1 Minute Millionaire. I don't know what that is, but sounds outlandish and I want to go read it. So, right, whatever it is you've got to say, go for it. Those are the 3 things I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the idea of having an editor or a mentor or a coach is super important because they're going to pull things out of you that you never thought of. Like
Right.
you're so close to your ideas and like you might have fear and say, oh, wait a minute, that thing that you just said, let's unpack that. Let's dive into the deep. Wait a minute. That's your overarching theme for the whole thing. And you never would have thought of that had you not had that mentorship, that editor, that coach. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't that happen?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you and discussing publishing a book and getting started and all that. You have an invitation for a free masterclass. It's called the Author Path Masterclass, 5 Steps to Getting Your Book Written.
Yeah, I do.
Yep. And you can get that at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com/author path. And tell us a little bit about that. What's
I
entitled
take
there?
people through the 5 steps that it takes to really write, publish, market your book, including things that we've talked about here, how to get the first draft manuscript written, the different kinds of editors, why people hire the wrong editor at the wrong time, and not to do that. So I talk about some mistakes. I talk about how to choose the type of publishing you want. If you're a self-publisher, a hybrid publisher, going for an agent, whatever, I talk through all of that. And then I talk about different ways to market your book so it doesn't just languish in the Amazon algorithm and how to actually get it out there and launch your book. I don't know if I said all 5 steps, but I cover all those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
I
think there was
teach
5.
it live once a month. I have an evergreen masterclass up, but I also teach it live once a month so that people can come in and ask questions and talk about their specific situation with me.
Yeah. And you can go to theauthorpath.com to learn all about that. And also in the show notes, there'll be contact information on how you can connect with Michelle. And Michelle Van De Paz, thank you so much for being on the show. And remember, faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal. Until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show, I'm Paul Guyon and Michelle Van De Paz. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lead Machine Growth Show with Paul Guyon, where we show you how to tackle your tech, master your message, and design your dream so that you can transform your vision into reality. Remember to visit our website at www.leadmachinegrowthshow.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show.